I am very, very happy that Ursula von der Leyen, our second time co-chairwoman, our third time DLDwomen attendee, is going to give us her keynote right now. Last year, Ursula, you gave us a gripping keynote speech on the bright side and the dark side of a truly global and borderless labor market, where only talent counts, not networking, but on the other side, competition is going to become much more fierce. That was a great keynote. And this year, you're going to take the topic even further, because the world of work is rapidly changing. And more than ever, companies have to rethink the way they recruit and retain the best employees, especially in Europe, the continent of the demographic change, the continent that is getting older of an aging society. I'm extremely honored, Ursula, that you have agreed after the keynote to have lead a discussion with two leading figures from the Silicon Valley, Jaleh Bisharat and Jackie Reeses. And I want to welcome you on stage. Please welcome on stage Ursula von der Leyen, by the way, a mother of 7. I mean,
thank you. Thank you.
Only a mother. Thank you.
So good morning. I'm going to introduce the forum Future of Work. And before we go right into the topic, I would like to talk about 3 preconditions we have to see when we're discussing the future of work. The first precondition is well known, it's demographic change. Here you see, whoa, what is that? No, this one, sorry. Here you see, forget the other one. Here you see our globe, and you see the darker the color of the country is, the higher the proportion of the population that is age over 60. That is demographic change. At the moment being, well, there are some light countries and darker countries. A real problem occurs where you see Japan with a muddy brown color. That's a country that has more than 30% proportion of its population that is age 60 and older. Well, at this point, you might think it's none of our problem. Well, if we look at the year 2050, where most of you will still be active parts of the workforce, you'll see that part, which shows what demographic change does. All of a sudden, remember, a proportion of more than 30% of the population is age 60 and older. Almost the majority of the northern part of our globe, like Canada, of course Europe, but you see Russia, you see China, all of them affected heavily by what we call demographic change. Second precondition we're talking about when we're talking about future of work comes out of that, of course. Demographic change does not only occur because too few children were born, but it's also, which is wonderful, something which is related to life expectancy. We're getting older, an aging society, and there you see, this does not work, what we may do with it. On the left side, you see the mother of Albrecht Dürer, a famous painter, 500 years ago. She was 63 years old when he painted this wonderful picture. On the right-hand side, you see, of course, Tina Turner, age 63, 500 years later. So it's not a matter of age. It's a question of how agile you stay physically and mentally. In an aging population, this is what this picture shows. The third precondition in societies that are shrinking, that are aging, is, of course, the question, where is the hidden potential? Well, women are the hidden potential, you know that. But I say that female participation does not come out of nowhere. We've heard it already. So let me show you a typical picture for a typical German board of a large company. Here is the Deutsche Bank. am part of the baby boomer generation. We were many talented women when we were young. I thought at that time, when I was young, being a medical doctor, that the world cannot ignore us. Well, today I know if you do not only want to work hard, but if you also want to work powerful, you have to insist on it. And that's what the picture tells you. The youngest one here is in his mid-end 30s. I'll turn it around. I'm not going to ask the question, what is wrong with women in this company? I'm going to ask the question, what is wrong with a company that has thousands and thousands of employees, that it is not possible to nominate one woman out of these 1,000 that is board suitable? So, dear Vivian, you're right if you said there are a lot of women that are board suited. Go, get them. That's the answer we have to give today. And now, well, let's go on to the next topic, which is future of work. If you see we have populations that are shrinking, that are aging, that are hopefully more female, what is the key word we're talking about with the future of work? We're talking about flexibility. And this is going to be what the future of work looks like. I'm going to tell you a personal story. 25 years ago, when I was a medical doctor at the hospital, the working conditions were very rigid. Nothing to choose, fixed working hours, of course a fixed working place. I felt absolutely torn between family and working life. Then we had the advent of the modern communication technologies. 10 years ago, I became a minister. I would not have been a minister if it were not for the internet, for laptops, at that time, cell phones, that made it possible that I could choose to work whenever I wanted and wherever I wanted. It gave me a lot of physical freedom. And my motto always was, don't ask me where I do something or when I will do something. Do only ask me what the result of my work is. But if we're talking about future of work, and I know how much options and possibility the modern communication technologies do give us, well, I have to admit that now, today, after 10 years in politics, I still do enjoy the advantages, but I also know about the dark side, the difficulties, the risks. If the boundaries between work and private life become blurred, then it starts to be a problem. I know how important it is always to make sure that I have my retreats to the analog world, and it's tough to do that. No text, no emails, no iPhone. You have to fight for it. And therefore, I want just put the thesis in the room for the next two speakers, that digitalization, of course, can enable you to work as you want, you decide. But on the other hand, it can dominate your life if you're not careful and turn it into a life of fragmentation, always reachable, always present, always online. There is nobody but you who sets limits and who draws red lines. Some smart people say the iPhone in your pocket is a terrorist in your pocket. And therefore, there is a good reason why today we have a sharp rise of psychological disorders at work. We call it burnout in a popular way. We have in Germany 59 million sick days a year coming from burnout, psychological disorders. It is cause number one for the early retirement. And when I talk about early retirement, I'm not talking about 60-year-old. I'm talking about, on average, 48-year-old. These are the motivated. These are the overachiever. And I'm talking about social costs of 27 billion a year in Germany only. In other words, we have a two-sided coin. And these are the keywords for the next speakers. Of course, the keywords of future of work is flexibility, which is there. But it's also a matter of regeneration and a matter of happiness. Happiness is heavily depending on human interaction and communication. That's the reason actually why we are here physically today, why we're not doing it on a screen, our conference, but we meet each other, we see each other, we talk to each other. I have outlined last year in the DLD Women what it can be like to work in a cloud. The company puts their problem online. They ask qualified freelancers worldwide to compete for the assignments. So from Munich to San Francisco to Bangalore, employees are scattered across the global talent cloud. They are hired in a context of changing teams, hired for a week, hired for a month, hired for a year. It's not sure how long this employment will go. The question we have to discuss today is, does the brave new world give us freedom and independence, or in contrast, constant competition and isolation? I am very glad today to have two leading practitioners from Silicon Valley by my side. I'm sure we're going to talk in more detail about Yahoo's controversial move to ban home office and get employees back to work in the office. Is that a fallback in darker times, darker past, or is it that home office simply won't do? Or does it mean we cannot have it all, a maximum of flexibility, close collaboration, and a vibrant communication in the team? At first, I'm very happy to introduce Jaleh Bisharat. She grows startups into vibrant, trusted brands. The mother of two, is the current vice president of marketing at Odesk, the world's largest and fastest growing online workplace. Jaleh, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Will you put up my first slide? Good morning. Hi. I will open with a personal story. From the year 2000, not so dissimilar to Ursula, where being successful at my job meant spending many long hours in my office at my desk. Now, my children at the time were 8 and 5 years old. And I had a very supportive husband who was very involved in raising the kids. And I was the vice president of marketing at Amazon, where I loved every minute of my exciting job. But many evenings I would go home with a churning stomach. I felt guilty walking out past my team who were still slaving away at their desks. But I would walk in the front door at home, and I would also feel guilty to see that my children had already eaten their dinner. They had had their baths, and they were getting ready to go to bed. And my daughter would constantly ask me, you see, a lot of evenings I would call back to the office. It was my way of plugging back in. And she would say, Mom, can you please make your phone calls from my room? And so I would do that. I would hold her soft little hand, and she would go to sleep to the sound of my voice. Not talking to her, though, but talking to other people about the day's business. And so it went until one day I thought that I and they deserved more. Because at that time, work was a place. And I couldn't be in two places, at work and at home with them at the same time. And so I was really, really sad. But I left my exciting job at Amazon. Now, it's July 15th, 2013. And as Ursula mentioned, after 13 years of technology magic, a new world of work is emerging, and one that would not necessarily have forced someone like me to make such a binary choice. Now, the future of work has many, many facets to it. But if I had to summarize them, I would choose these words, if this would advance. work is no longer a place. Let me ask all of you, how many of you have brought your smartphones or your iPads here to the conference? Show of hands. In fact, how many of you brought your offices with you to DLD Women? That's essentially what you've done. Think about that. For centuries, we brought the worker to the work. Now, we can bring the work to the worker. Let's consider a CEO that I know named Jay Shapiro. Very successful CEO. He used to run a company of 200 employees in 3 offices, which he sold. And he now has a new company, also a very, very successful technology company. And I would like to show you his world headquarters. He operates this company out of this. That's right, the Eco-Roamer. So Jay now travels the world with his family, and he says he works as many hours as he ever did before. And he has 30 people under him. And they work from places as far away as Tunisia and Turkey and Louisiana and New Jersey. A digital nomad. Now, how is this possible? Well, I think you all know that with technologies like Skype and Google Docs and GitHub and Google Hangouts, teams can come together in flexible fashion and work together collaboratively. Of course, I can imagine what you're all thinking at this minute, which is that freedom and flexibility are wonderful. But what about the interaction that nurtures our souls? Well, there's lots of creative solutions to that issue as well. Here's Beta House in Berlin, a co-working space like many, many co-working spaces that are mushrooming around the world, allowing startups and flexible workers to come together and to take inspiration and creativity from each other. At my company, Odesk in Silicon Valley, we all gather in the office 4 days a week. But every Tuesday, we all work from home. We all save the drive and 20% of the fossil fuels that we would otherwise burn on a weekly basis. Now, is the future of work entirely rosy? Well, of course not. We've already heard mention of that. Certainly, freedom and flexibility are wonderful, but we as a society need to come together to figure out how we don't compromise things like decent access to health care and a steady income and work-life balance. We also need to start thinking about the ways in which we as individuals succeed in this future of work. So for the second half of my short talk, I'll turn my attention to the 7 habits, what I think of as the 7 habits of successful people in the future of work. So, habit number 1, craft your personal brand. What do I mean by that? Well, think of the mental shortcuts that we all use to make sense of people who we don't know very well. The gifted musician, the genius with big data, the crack coder. As managers are starting to look to compose fluid projects and teams and look for certain characteristics, the importance of personal brand is increasing. So how do you think about that? How do you go about identifying your personal brand? Especially, I'm speaking more to some of the younger women in the group now. Well, think of it this way. When someone encounters you for the very first time, what do you want them to think? What do you bring to the table? What's that one thing you bring to the table that's unique? How do you want to be remembered? Once you've identified your personal brand, of course you have to earn it. You have to deliver on it consistently. And then you need to make sure to promote it, to be present in the places that your audience cares about, whether it be Zing or Twitter or LinkedIn or meetups or conferences like this one. Habit number 2. Focus on the 20%. Okay, let's all ask ourselves a very honest question. Think back over the last year of all the work you did, and try and calculate what proportion of the time you spent on work that actually had an impact on your business, that actually really made a difference to your company or your professional goals, and what percent of the time you were just busy. There's a big difference between progress and motion. And in this results-oriented economy, progress and impact is more important than ever. So how do you distinguish the two? Well, obviously, it depends on your situation, but it begins with a framework for thinking about how to create ruthless prioritization. And the framework that I use is one I call the 20% rule. 20% of the effort gets 80% of the results. So on a constant basis, I ask myself and I ask my team, are we working on the 20%? And guess what? A lot of the times, we kind of aren't. And we cancel it. And when we use this litmus test, we make a lot of adjustments. It's really hard to walk away from stuff you feel like you should be doing but isn't really moving the needle. But that's critical. Habit number 3, prioritize people. So when I graduated from business school, I had 2 job offers. One was with a traditional database company for what seemed to me like a lot of money at the time. The other was with a spin-out of Apple Computer, with a lot of innovative people in it. And I really agonized because the salary gap was so huge and I was so young at the time. But in the end, I chose the company with the innovative people. And I am certain that that changed the course of my life. Not only did I learn from the very best people, but some of those people went on to become Silicon Valley legends. And they brought me my next opportunities. Choose around the best people, and those people will open doors for you. Habit 4, evolve yourself every day. It used to be that we went to university, then we went to work. Now, with the need for skills changing so rapidly, no matter how seasoned you are, no matter how experienced you are, you need to be nimble. With options like Coursera and General Assembly and so on, successful people think of learning as a lifelong, continuous, and daily pursuit. Habit 5, articulate solutions, not problems. So I'll give you an example. A little while ago, I hired 3 freelancers, as it turns out on Odesk, to do the same short little project. I needed someone to compare wage rates around the world. Now, why did I hire 3 people? Well, actually, I had a much bigger project to follow, and I wanted to see who was going to do the best job. There was a problem with my assignment, though, which is that it was really hard to do an apples-to-apples comparison because countries calculate wages differently. All 3 of the freelancers were eager to do good work, and all 3 came back very quickly and said, wait, there's a problem in how you've assigned it. And 2 of them said, what would you like me to do about it? But the third one said, here's the problem, and here's my recommendation for how to solve it. Who do you think got the big job? Of course, it's very important to flag problems early, but successful people come with solutions. Now, for those of you who are entrepreneurs, habit number 6, think outside the talent box. Let's say you started a company and you need some talent. You're no longer limited to whoever happens to live within 25 or 50 kilometers of where you happen to be. Let's say you need some graphic design done and the most talented person is a part-time mom who lives in the north of Germany. Now you can go ahead and hire that person. Now, how do you make this all work? What if you've got some remote workers? What if you have a blend of people in your office and some of them who are remote? This brings me to the 7th and final habit, and probably the most important for the future of work. You need to focus on building a high-performance culture, especially for your remote team. So let me explain what I mean by that. If you've hired someone that's not in your office, maybe they're working with you over the internet, like Jay Shapiro and his 30 people, you can't do this if you're a bad manager. This is not for bad managers. This takes some good management. But if you're a good manager, here's the trick. Take the very best practices you use to motivate and inspire and lead people in your office and intensify those and use those for your remote workers. For example, make sure you have really crisp, clear, written goals and objectives with clear milestones and deadlines and measurements. For heaven's sakes, you should have written objectives for people in your office, but you certainly need them for your remote workers. You should check in with them as often as you check in with people in the next cubicle. You should treat them as kindly as people in your office. You should give feedback frequently, whether it's a course correction or whether it's praise or thanks or a small bonus. At Odesk, at my company, we have more than 300 contractors around the world, and we use these practices, these and other in-office best practices to manage that team. So, I've talked about how work is no longer a place. And I know how that can seem disorienting or even disruptive, maybe even a little bit scary for some of the reasons Ursula alluded to earlier. But I do want to say this. I think if we implement this shift well, there is so much upside here. Think of the gifted programmer in a remote part of the country. Think of the disabled English to French translator who can't easily leave the house. Think of the person in a rural part of Germany who's caring for a disabled parent, who may be a graphic designer, whose work may be priceless. Think of the talent that they and all of you have to offer. And think of the talent that all of you as entrepreneurs can take advantage of. I think if we manage this shift well, we will create opportunities for freedom and prosperity that we have never seen before. Thank you.
Welcome, Jacqueline Reeses. Would you mind to shift one over? Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Jaleh. So, given the interest in Yahoo and some of our recent changes, and also the interest and the topic, which is perspectives from Silicon Valley, I thought what I would do is use Yahoo as a vehicle for talking about how we use culture to drive innovation. And so I'm going to walk through a lot of the things that we've been doing at Yahoo. You've heard about one of them. There are lots more that we think are going to change the way the company is perceived and the type of products we're going to create over the next few years. So I came to Yahoo about 9 months ago. I came because of the incredible people, incredible products, and I came to join an absolutely amazing CEO. The company starts with a great culture, an amazing culture. And when you think of Yahoo, you think of fun, you think of irreverence, you think of collaboration, and you think of passion. Those are the memes that drive the culture and the environment at Yahoo. We don't want to change this type of culture. We want to amplify it. And how do we amplify a culture to create an environment of innovation? So we made a lot of changes. And I will turn. They fall into 3 categories. We're moving faster. We ask the question absolutely every day, how can we remove barriers for productivity, for efficiency, and how do we ultimately help employees do their job better? That's our goal. Second, amplifying the culture and amplifying greatness. Every company has absolutely amazing elements. The question is, what can you do to amplify them? You can't change them, you can amplify them. And our goal is to amplify the culture by design and not by default. And then finally, you always need to be tuning the engine. What do you do to keep your business running smoothly, efficiently, as productively as it can be run? So we use speed as a strategy. And what does that mean? We block inertia. Everything can change. That element in and of itself is incredible when you think about how companies typically work, where something is just fine. It's good enough. That's the way it's been for a long time. Well, nothing is sacrosanct. We're willing to look at everything. We're willing to change everything. And if we make the decision, we're doing it immediately. We don't equivocate. If we take a decision, we go, and we go immediately thereafter. We push faster and audacious goals, and that's what we do every day as a team. It also means that we get rid of roadblocks for productivity. Every CEO should ask the question every day, what ideas block productivity? What can we do to improve the company? And that's what Marissa did when she joined Yahoo. We created a program, it's called PB&J, and it stands for Process, Bureaucracy, and Jams. And essentially, we use this as a vehicle to make sure every employee can raise any idea to change the company and make something more efficient, from the bottom up. Oh, we're not clicking
Press
very
twice.
well. And we give employees the tools to get their job done. We introduce mobile technology to every employee, not just those that touch mobile, because every employee can have a point of view on how to make a product better. And we want our employees to have the most advanced technology at their fingertips everywhere around the world. Mobile's absolutely a critical element of our future, and everybody should have the best tools at their fingertips. We introduce food at our offices. Earl's is actually our cafeteria in Sunnyvale. Hope you enjoy the name. And we make it easier for everyone to eat together. They can collaborate. It encourages team productivity. On Monday nights, you can find employees there for game night, getting together, spending time with each other, and improving the way that we operate together. Our employees have become more and more engaged and more collaborative. So now let's talk about how we amplify the culture. We have a style of radical transparency at Yahoo. Every Friday, employees get together and can ask the executive team any question they want. And we send out a moderator. This is a picture of our moderator, where every employee can submit a question, and it's either voted up or voted down by employees. And the top questions we answer in a public forum for all the employees. It's a great forum to hear feedback from absolutely everyone in the company. We also celebrate risk, and I think this is a great concept that we've all enjoyed. So you can't have innovation and entrepreneurship without failure. And so we celebrate mistakes on a weekly basis, or we celebrate the way someone fixed a mistake, and we're not embarrassed by it, and we don't hide behind it. And I think highlighting those elements enables people to feel comfortable with risk-taking. We also foster innovation through what we call hackathons. So hacks have been around at Yahoo since 2005, and what they are competitions to enable employees in an extremely short period of time to create new products. So I hope everybody has seen our new weather app. If you haven't seen it, I implore you to download it. It's incredible, it's beautiful, it's visual. It just won the Apple Design Award. And that weather app was created at an employee, or the concept for it was created at an employee hackathon. And then finally, how do you ensure a great culture will continue at your core? And we call this tuning the engine. So we set goals every quarter to keep the cadence quick. We calibrate employees. We make sure there are performance discussions on a quarterly basis. We created hiring committees so that every new potential employee is reviewed by the executive team at Yahoo, and we make sure that that skill base, background, and person is aligned with our strategy. And then finally, we created launch calendars and roadmaps so that the vision and execution plan is absolutely clear. We absolutely believe that companies with the best talent will win. And so we have been extremely deliberate in the way that we engage internally. Our applications are up about 880%. We've had so much interest in coming to work at Yahoo. We have 12% of our employees, our new employees now, are people who have left Yahoo and have decided to come back. And so it's been a great year. There's this really funny quote, which I'll put up. And this is very Silicon Valley, so I thought it was highly appropriate here. There's an unquantifiable increase in spirit, pride, and energy, but estimated at a factor of at least pi. So you can appreciate the engineering spirit behind that quote. And so with that, I hope it gives you a little bit of a perspective on some of the changes we're instilling at Yahoo and why the environment of innovation and collaboration is so important to our long-term success. Thank you.
Thank you. These were wonderful speeches. What I do, these were very inspiring American speeches. Germans tend to be critical and nagging, ask nagging questions. So I'll want to split our discussion 3 blocks. The first one is on your side. What did your employees say when you asked them to come back to the office? So work is a place for you. And what do you do with your employees to make sure that they have an offline secure time? The second block, just to prepare you, will be on what are you doing with the aging workforce? And the third block will be, what does it do with women in your companies? So let's at first look at Yahoo. Yahoo did just the opposite, what everyone does. Yahoo told his employees back to the office.
Right.
You have to be present. You have to show up. What reactions did it provoke? And please, we are offline here.
Exactly.
tell us the truth and all the details.
Yeah.
It cannot only have been smooth and easy and nice and pleasant.
So it's interesting. I think that proposal was received with a lot of noise externally. And I think within Yahoo, our employee base understands what the mission is that we're experiencing here and now, and that we are on a mission to turn the company around. And so internally, we have an employee forum that's public. It's anyone can read it and can comment. And some of the comments from developers who had worked from home said things like, you know, I'd never been in the office and I moved to California as part of this process, and I now see what you're talking about. Because I was in the hallway, I was at the cafeteria, I ran into my boss, I ran into the 5 people who work on my team that I'd not been present with on a regular basis. And so even the environment and comments from some of the folks who were most affected were quite positive internally. And so, you know, it wasn't without its bumps because of the external noise, but I think from a Yahoo point of view, given where we're at here and now, it's absolutely the right decision for us.
Yeah, so your underlying message is you need, if you want to have a team that is working efficiently, you need to have personal contact, interaction, small talk, see each other, smell each other, touch each other.
Absolutely.
All these things,
Absolutely.
Yes. Question to you. As I said, in my ministry, we signed the very first agreement for rules when somebody has the right to be constantly offline for the rest of the day. And it was very, very hard to discuss how these rules should be structured with the personal representatives. So what are your rules in your company to protect your employees for overdoing it?
Oh, you mean your question is how do we prevent people from being online all the time?
All the time and always on duty, always alert, knowing that on the long term this has negative effects on the performance?
Yeah. You know, we actually place a great deal of emphasis on work-life balance, and it comes all the way from our CEO. We actually talk a lot about the reasons a person would choose a job. And let me just start by saying that we agree with Jackie that talent is virtually everything. We built Odesk around talent. There are a lot of people who wouldn't even be working at Odesk, and I'm one of them because I live pretty far away. If we didn't have this ability to be measured by results and to work whenever we want, wherever we want, as long as we're producing results. We also evaluate our managers by how well they manage the team under them, because we do respect remote work, but we need to make sure we're getting results from it. In terms of making sure that people aren't always connected, so having the best talent but also protecting work-life balance is part of our core culture. And you know, it's pretty much been successful simply by having our CEO support it. We don't have certain rules about it. We don't say what you can and can't do. You know, when people shut down, they shut down, and that's respected.
Okay. Let's move on to the second topic. Aging workforce. Everything I heard was, and it's fascinating, it's about enthusiasm, fast, inspiring, speed, innovation, build a high-performance culture. We will have an aging workforce. That's a fact, whether we like it or not. Are there any ideas how modern technologies do help, and what do you specifically for an aging workforce? All of you will be part of an aging workforce, whether you like it or not.
So it's interesting. We have the average age of our workforce is 28. And so we might be in a very different environment for most people. And having just acquired Tumblr, we're aging down, not up, in terms of our workforce. You know, I don't think we change.
May I just interrupt for one minute? Because we can just push that topic away, like saying we have a young workforce. You have an aging consumer group, because let me give you one figure. 70% today of the global GDP comes from aging society, which is large enough to be significant, 70%. So what are you doing for the aging consumer society?
So, it's funny, I think the goal when we develop products is to make them simple and beautiful and easy to use. And I always describe myself as the lowest common denominator of product usage because I'm not technologically advanced and I'm 43. So I'm well past the, I have fallen to that.
28.
Yes, I'm past 28. You know, simplicity is the way we think about it in terms of what we're trying to achieve from a product point of view. And that simplicity and beauty would enable anybody at any age to be able to use things. And I think our goal is to not build things for a particular generation, but just to make sure that everybody would find them equally as usable. Because I think your point is absolutely well taken.
Yes, what we do know is aging societies still have, of course we have the phenomenon of brain plasticity, which is a changing brain all over the life period, as long as motivation and inspiring effects on the brain are there. So the question you will have to answer is, do you get the right motivation for people who are in another age than 28?
Right.
Which is important.
So
what about your workforce?
I will answer it in terms of the future of work and an aging workforce. When I first got to Odesk, actually, the very first freelancer I hired on Odesk, I was looking for someone who was an expert in brand. And I was shocked. I found this guy who was in his 60s who used to be a head of brand for a major, major advertising agency in New York. And I thought, how did I get access to this kind of talent? So I started talking to him. He said, you know, I'm a grandfather now. I spend most of my time with my grandkids, but I like to work about 15 hours a week to stay sharp, to stay connected, to stay part of the game. And that was when I realized this really is the future of work. People can dip in and dip out. They can keep their finger in the pie, they can participate, they can contribute their skills, but they can decide how much or how little, and he had retired to a very remote part of North Carolina, and he was extremely happy doing this. So I'm just using that as an example of how I think actually technology enables an aging workforce to participate at whatever level they're interested in.
And now last point, what does it make to women? Please focus on back to the office. Is this a male-female thing or not? What does it make to women's lives? If you say back to the offices, and of course the same question will come to you in a moment.
So at Yahoo, it actually wasn't a male-female issue. It was a small population of people who ironically were almost largely men. And so we didn't think of it as a women's issue at all. We thought of it as a productivity and collaboration issue more than anything else. I mean, there are a lot of things where, we'd love to empower women. We have a lot of women leaders at Yahoo, including a wonderful CEO. And so from an environment point of view and from a population of people that we hire, I think we, more than a lot of companies in Silicon Valley, are very female-friendly. We also just created an incredible set of maternity and paternity policies, which I think you in particular might appreciate, given some of the policy initiatives that you have fought for. and that well beyond what is a statutory requirement, we have given every woman who has a baby, basically 8 weeks off paid for maternity leave, plus another 8 weeks off if she's actually had the baby. And then for every father gets 8 weeks off. And so from a female working environment, and frankly from a male working environment, we think it's a great place and kind of very family-friendly type of options to enable people who value their family and value the time with their kids to have that at some of those defining moments in their life.
Out of curiosity, the 8 weeks off are being paid?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Absolutely.
This is good.
Absolutely.
This is necessary. Okay. To your side, what does it do to men and women or females?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's such a big men versus women thing. On Odesk, we have about 4 million freelancers. More than half of them, more than 60% actually, are men. So I think, both genders participate equally in the future of work. The one thing I will say, though, to the extent that women suffer from some stereotypes, and I think we all know what they are in terms of, being the tough boss versus the bossy boss or whatever, I think that as we move to a world where it's more results-oriented, I think some of that gender stereotyping naturally diminishes. Because you're really, you're working with someone who may be in your office, they may be halfway across the country, and you're looking at the work itself. So I think it will naturally take care of some of that stereotyping that we struggle with.
So thank you so much. This was an insight in the future of work. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Jaleh.
Thank you.
Thank you for the audience.
Thank you.
And let's move to the next topic.